Hi, this is Kathy Dasson from Moving with Presence Yoga Therapy. Just wanted to talk a little bit today about our hip joints. So I have here a pelvis, and this is the front of the pelvis, and here is the back. You'll see the base of the spine and coming into the sacrum and down to the tailbone. What I'd really like to tune into today is this piece right here. So the leg, here's the leg itself, connects into the pelvis via this hip socket. And so the leg, when we're walking or moving around, our leg swings forward, it swings back, it can go a little side to side, and it can also rotate like a spinning motion. And that's because of the ball that is attached to this femur, this leg, which connects then into the hip socket. What's interesting to me, especially in our lifestyle where we do a lot of sitting, or we're in our car a lot, or we're sitting on the couch watching TV, all those fun things to do, which are not bad. But the thing is, a lot of times when we do a lot of the same activity over and over, which could be sitting, this joint here, where the leg meets the pelvis, doesn't get a lot of love, a lot of variety, a lot of movement, and that can then start to lead to some strain in the lower back region or around the sacroiliac joints, places in the lower back or middle back, or even into the hips that can cause pain and strain. So I just wanted to do a short practice today so that we could start to dive into looking at the way the leg bone moves in the hip socket. So again, just to see that you can move your leg without your pelvis moving. Now, so often when we're living our life, what happens is instead of moving at this hip joint, we just kind of move the pelvis around, which, because the spine and the pelvis are connected, there can be some strain or some over effort, muscular effort, tension, tightness that might arise due to the fact that even though we meant to do something in our hip joint moving, it didn't happen. So then the body just finds a different way to do it. So I'm going to give you an example. So when we sit in a chair, one of my favorite ways to sit in a chair, and I know that I see many people like to sit in this position. So you'll just even yourself sitting here at the edge of the chair seat, and you can feel your sit bones on the chair. And then I'm going to bring my right foot up and cross my ankle to my opposite knee. And so you might see folks sitting like this, or you like to do this maybe for a stretch where you lean a little forward and you can stretch the outer hip muscles here. And same thing with the other side. So what's interesting to me about this is that in order to get my ankle to the opposite knee, I did a lot more than just move my leg in the hip socket. What I did in addition to that was, in order to get my ankle to my knee, if you watch where my hands are here, I lifted my leg, and this is about as far as I'm able to get my leg up in space where my pelvis hasn't changed position. Now, in order for me to get my ankle to the opposite knee, I have to lift my leg a little higher, turn the leg out, but you can see that I have to kind of tilt myself backwards in order to get my ankle to my knee. Now, it's not terrible to do that. It's just interesting that because there's limitation in that ball and socket hip joint, that means my lower back had to change shape, my pelvis had to tilt backwards in order for me to get my ankle to my knee. So let's watch that again. So here I have fairly neutral pelvis. Then as I bring my leg up, if I were to just try and move my leg by itself, it definitely would not get all the way up to above my knee here. So in order for me to do that, I have to tilt myself round my back and bring myself ankle to knee, and then I'll actually straighten up again, right? So again, that's not terrible. It's just that it would be great if I could, with awareness, use a little bit more of my hip joints and less of this movement through the pelvis in order to get the ankle to knee. Okay, so with this practice, you're going to need a strap and maybe just a blanket under your head is fine. And we're going to start lying down on your back. Now, here you go, and you can take your blanket again if you like and have that to support your head. And then just relaxing for a moment, letting your body settle onto the earth. Now we could even curiously explore here, what does the pelvis do when I bring ankle to knee in this position? So say I bring my leg up in the air, and then I rotate the leg in the hip socket, and then I go to bring my ankle to my knee. But in order for me to do that, I have to roll the pelvis backwards, rounding my lower back to get the ankle to the knee, and then I can let the pelvis return back to its neutral position. What that shows me is that I have some limitation in the hip joint as I brought the leg up, and in order for me to get the ankle to the knee, I had to compensate by tilting the pelvis in order to get my ankle to my knee. And compensation isn't necessarily bad, but it is interesting that if you do have lower back pain, how much are you actually moving the leg in the hip socket versus how much are you unconsciously just letting your spine round or your pelvis do the movement of the hip joint. So what you can do here is take a yoga belt, or if you have a bathrobe tie, that works just fine, something that has some length to it. And you can bring the belt around the ball of one foot. Bring your leg up towards the sky. Now when you bring the leg up, just want to make sure here, the same thing, that as you draw your leg towards your chest, that same action may happen where you start to flatten your back and the pelvis itself is tilting backwards, which makes the leg appear that it's getting more straight up towards the sky. However, there was really no movement at the hip joint. So if you keep the pelvis fairly neutral here, and then keep the knee slightly bent and just lift the leg only as much as the pelvis stays quiet. From this position now, we'll hold one strap in each hand, and then I'm just going to start to rotate my leg in the hip socket. So what I'm doing here is my leg from the top of the thigh is rotating out and in. It's like a spinning of the leg in the pelvis. And all the while as I'm doing that, I'm just going to put my hand here on my front of my pelvis. I just want to make sure that it's only my leg that's moving. So I'm differentiating between leg and pelvis. If I were to move the leg and the pelvis together, it would look something like this. Now that's a little exaggerated, but it's interesting to just start to see what is your actual rotation of the leg in the pelvis here. And then after rotation, just come back for a moment, take both straps one in each hand, and then glide the leg, the top leg, across your midline a bit, and go only as far as your pelvis doesn't roll to the side. So the pelvis itself is staying very quiet throughout this whole practice. Then you can bring the leg back up to the center and start to take the leg away from the midline. So you're moving it out to the side. And just for this practice, only go as far as your pelvis doesn't roll or tilt. We're teaching the leg how to move independently from the pelvis. So you can go side to side a few times. Don't worry about the range of motion. It's not important how far you get. It's the quality that we're growing here. Right? So then release your foot back down. If you want to, you can stretch your legs out or keep them bent, and just notice if you feel any difference between the first side that you practiced and the other leg. And then stand your feet on the floor again, and we'll do the other foot. So bring the belt around the bottom of the foot. And again, finding that place where, keeping the knee bent a little, finding the place where the pelvis stays quiet, the low back doesn't flatten, and the pelvis doesn't tilt backwards. So the pelvis is just relaxed and comfortable. Holding one strap in each hand here. start to rotate your leg. Now you're rotating from the top of the thigh, remember where that ball and socket joint is, so your foot is just following along. Try to focus on just having the leg move independently from the pelvis, so the pelvis doesn't tilt and shift as the leg moves. This will really help you to be more conscious of just moving the leg by itself in the hip socket. Then you can take one strap in each hand here, and we'll start to move the top leg across your midline. Just going as far as you feel the pelvis stays quiet. So it doesn't matter how far it goes there. Bring it back to center and then away from the midline out to the side. And one thing you can be curious about as well is as your leg goes away from the midline, did your opposite knee want to fall out to the side to kind of counterbalance that? So in this instance, the leg comes across the midline again, and then the leg goes out to the side. The bottom leg is nice and quiet, just like the pelvis. So we're teaching the leg to move independently in the hip socket, not the pelvis helping out here. All right, and then we'll go ahead and release your strap down. You can stretch both legs again if you like, just to sense and tune into your breath. And maybe you notice some warmth or sensation around the hips or the legs. Great. Okay, so now we're going to roll to your side and come back up and just revisit that sitting in the chair again. This practice isn't necessarily going to make a huge change right away in allowing the ankle to the knee when sitting in a chair. However, what the aim of this practice today is to really just build your awareness on, are you actually moving the leg independently, or are you moving the pelvis to get the leg to move, okay? So I'm going to bring my chair back in here. So sitting at the edge of the chair seat, just relaxing, feeling my feet on the earth, coming into breath. So now I'll just test. So I'll bring my leg up. Now remember the rotation. That rotation came from the top of the leg in the hip socket. You can see that my rotation is a lot smaller than the journey that it would take to get my ankle above the knee, right? So that is A-okay. It's just giving me some information that I can work with and start to pay attention to. Same with the other leg. So rotation, and then just bringing the leg down. Remembering that if I were to turn to the side here, in order for me to get my ankle to the opposite knee, I don't have that rotation available. So I'm going to have to lean back and put my ankle up to my knee, and then I'll right the pelvis again, right? So again, it's not bad to do that. What I've found is, even though it looks like I still have quite a bit of limitation, I've actually made a lot of progress. It used to be even a smaller range of motion than it was today. So, and not only that, but my back feels better. I feel stronger and more connected through my hips and knees and feet. I don't have some of those aches and strains that I used to have when I didn't have this conscious awareness. So hopefully this practice gives you a sense of how your hips are connected into the rest of your body and how you can use this movement to help free up the hips and create ease and being. Thanks for practicing. Enjoy.